When I was a kid, I was hugely passionate about video games. My dad was a huge gamer from way back, and he passed that love down to me. We would play NES games together when I was a little kid. And as I grew, my love for gaming grew as well. We played hundreds of games together for the Super Nintendo and Nintendo 64 throughout the 90s. I discussed in the Tomb Raider and Grand Theft Auto 2 episodes that I got a PlayStation 1 around the year 2000, but shortly thereafter was the fortunate recipient of a PlayStation 2, early in that system's life cycle, and was deeply invested in, among other things, the first two next-gen Grand Theft Auto games. What I didn't talk about on that episode was the fact that shortly after the release of Grand Theft Auto Vice City, around the time I started 9th grade, two of my friends in the pretty raw little crew I was running with broke into my house and stole a bunch of my shit. Most prominent for me was that they jacked my PS2 and all of my games. This came about right as I was getting into the other major interest of my life, the cinema. My dad, out of the kindness of his heart, gave me his PS2. But by that point, I had sort of fallen off of being part of gamer culture. I never finished Vice City, and I never even played the next GTA game. And most of my time spent with my second PS2 was using it as a DVD player, or playing lots and lots and lots of Madden. So my esteem, and more my patience, for long-form action games fell severely to the wayside. In the ensuing decades, every 6 months or a year or so, I would get the hankering to recapture that gamer mentality, like an emotional phantom limb. And I would buy a new console and round up a bunch of the acclaimed games, fire them up, and then play most of them for 20 or 30 minutes, and never look at them again. There was an occasional game that would strike my fancy, mostly the Portal series, but most of the games I would put down and never pick back up. I would joke that I was my best friend's video game girlfriend, and just watch him play them. As I got into the 2010s, I discovered long plays on YouTube, and I loved them, because it felt like all of the involvement of a normal action game, but with none of the time I viewed as wasted, learning how to actually get good at them. The other thing to know about me and my quirks is that I am a compulsive list maker. I love sorting data, not really by preference, but by chronological order. I love putting things in the order they happened, which feels like it fires some sort of magical synapses in my brain. Giving that context makes me feel like I created my own little form of time travel. My problem with most of my ideas is that I always want to expand things more and more. You know, I have an idea that I want to watch some TV shows from the early 90s. I can't just do this. I have to expand it to a day-to-day coverage of movies and music charts and pro wrestling and sports and commercials and news broadcasts and, well, you get the idea. I'm still doing that, by the way. It's a lot of fun. But here, if I'm being honest, choosing the Dreamcast specifically for some kind of public project was also based around the fact that it was a manageable number of games that I could organize into lists. Like, yes, I also liked the idea because I wanted a Dreamcast as a kid and never had one, but a lot of the appeal was that there were 248 games total. It felt achievable, encapsulatable. But when I started doing them as occasional weekly live streams, I only wanted to do about an hour or so for each game. Because the things I liked about the concept were that I could duck in and duck out, and check them off the list. I spent ages sorting them and weighing them, moving them around based on a bunch of criteria. That was the fun part. The actual payoffs were fun too, but almost beside the point. I did about a dozen streams, and they were fun. But I found myself mostly intrigued by the backstories of the games, the research. The experience of the game itself was mostly secondary, a means to an end. When I transitioned into the Dreamcast files proper as a YouTube series, I got to do the research, and I had a blast delving into the history and then presenting it. And I got a lot of positive response. But occasionally, I would get comments saying that they felt the history would overwhelm the specific subject at large. Games with lengthy franchise backgrounds like Test Drive or Resident Evil or Tomb Raider, where the specific game itself would only get a passing mention compared to being able to tell the whole story. I had fans coming to my defense that said that they liked that wave of context, and little more needed to be said about a game like Test Drive 6. But it's something I always thought about, in the back of my mind. Was I doing enough? Was I delving into the games enough? The series was doing well, but the schedule for it, covering one game a week for even 8 to 10 minutes per game, was devouring basically all my free time. I was stealing an hour here or there when my wife was sleeping or at work. And all the time I wasn't working on videos, I was worrying about getting them done on time. I stopped watching movies nearly entirely, and the pressure of the time frame was ever present in my mind. But something my daughter said to me really started my wheels turning. We were out shopping one night, and I was trying to hurry her along because I gotta get my video done by tomorrow. And she responded, "No, you don't. The only one making you do that is you." And it really got to me. I have a problem historically with making lists and then assigning myself those lists as homework, and then being mad about having to complete the lists that I assigned myself for a project nobody else knows about but me. List making is fun. Organizing is fun. Checking things off is fun. I also really like doing all the particulars of the video making process. I like doing the research, I like writing the scripts, I like doing the voiceovers, I liked editing the visuals. The problem is that the cog in the process that I liked doing the least was playing the games, or at least finding time to play the games when I gave myself so little time to do anything else. This, coupled with my obsession with exact chronology, meant that I was frequently rushing myself through the games, wondering when I had played enough to be able to produce 1,000 words on it, with most of those words being on the backstory, and then talking enough about the game at large to get by. I had a set order of a master list that I had made when I started the project, and I wouldn't let myself deviate from it even slightly. So sometimes I was playing 2 big, long games back to back, and I was giving each of them a short shrift because I ran out of time. When in reality, the only person who even knew about the order of the games was me. And most of these games were released so close to each other that they'd all have been on store shelves at the same time anyway. And I was blasting through them as carelessly as can be. This really hit home recently when I started playing a couple sequels to games I had already covered, and I realized I barely knew enough about the former games to even connect them to the latter. I had also started worrying too much about view counts to measure it with the effort I was putting in, and all those thoughts were still rattling around my brain. After 79 straight weeks without even an hour's delay, I decided to take a break and reset my mindset. But even then, I mostly just dived into another list activity, having fun trying to pair up the games in relative thematic and release date duos, and still trying to maintain a rigid schedule that didn't actually afford me any more free time. So I was determined to figure out a better way to do things. Now, if you're still watching, you might be asking, dude, what the fuck does this have to do with Buzz Lightyear? Well, thanks to my desire to play each of these games only very briefly, as well as my project coincidentally lining up with the 3 longest stints of unemployment in my adult life, I was not trying to spend a lot of money on any of these games, so I have relied pretty heavily on emulators. If I could track down a game at my local game store or find an affordable copy online, I bought it. But for the most part, $0 was basically about the limit on my budget. Especially under the severe schedule I placed upon myself. Made it hard to justify big purchases for such a small amount of time. Well, my next action game coming up on my new Pairs theme was Nightmare Creatures 2. But that game's emulation wouldn't really work for me. So I allowed myself to switch it for another pair of action games I had scheduled for later. And the first of those games was Toy Story 2: Buzz Lightyear to the Rescue. I came to an epiphany that I needed to just relax on the time component and just try to focus on the games themselves. I challenged myself to just play one game, put all my energy into that one game, try and beat that one game, and work on making the videos more in-depth generally. Since that not only sounded intriguing to me, but seems to be what people are interested in, and what the almighty algorithm demands anyway. So I thought, well, Buzz Lightyear to the Rescue is perfect. It's a shovelware-looking N64-ass platformer. If I can't beat this game, I better just give up altogether. But before we get into that, we still gotta do some scene setting. Love that historical context, baby! Hit the theme. The British development company Traveller's Tales got their start in 1989, starting off as associates of the developer and publisher Psygnosis. Through Psygnosis, they acquired a deal developing Disney interactive games, producing Mickey Mania: The Timeless Adventures of Mickey Mouse in 1994. This led to an assignment doing the game version of Disney's revolutionary 3D breakthrough hit, Pixar's Toy Story. The game featured 3D rendering a la Donkey Kong Country, and Pixar gave Traveller's Tales the actual animations of the film, although they took so long to provide this that it almost messed up their specific gambit, having the game release at the same time as the film. Typical practice for licensed games of the era was to have the games come out months, sometimes years, after the theatrical releases of the films. But Travelers completed things on schedule, and Toy Story for the Sega Genesis dropped in stores on Wednesday, November 22nd, 1995, the same day the film was released to theaters. A Super Nintendo version glided out less than a month later. Having played the Genesis version, it's fairly stiff and janky to control, but it's mostly a pretty cute, late-period, side-scrolling search-action platformer. And the graphics are eye-popping, absolutely putting the pedal to the floor when it comes to 16-bit power. Those animations Pixar delivered really coming through with a crispness and fluidity rarely seen on the console. Traveller's Tales maintained a relationship with Sega throughout the back half of the 90s, working in tandem with Sonic Team to produce games for the titular Hedgehog, like Sonic 3D Blast and Sonic R. Travelers also had a partnership with Activision, who in 1998 chose Travelers when they got the rights to make a game based on the upcoming sequel to Toy Story, which was going through its own extreme drama. Starting as a direct-to-video sequel, transitioning to theaters but with a lot of hurdles and storytelling hiccups, followed by an infamous situation where the entire film was accidentally deleted from servers and only salvaged from one single source, and then making updates and major alterations to the film's story and humor. Before much was known about the film, the game was announced in the spring of 1999 for a Thanksgiving release, to match the movie. They showed some footage at E3 in May as maybe the least important thing on the slate. It still got a playable demo on the floor. But even at first glance, the PlayStation version was being reported as looking vastly superior to the Nintendo 64 entry. But as the release date inched closer, the reviewers were sure they would get things fixed. A month later, when the game actually released, it became clear that these issues were not fixed. And while the PS1 version looked way better than its cartridge brethren, there was issues here, up and down. Early reviews complained about the inexact controls, the poor frame rate, and especially on N64, a hilariously short draw distance, where objects seem to just vanish into thin air once you get more than a few feet away from them. In December, another complaint came up, this time from audiences. The later levels feature a Mexican revolutionary bandolero stereotype as a villain, and to their credit, Disney and Activision were immediately like, yeah, alright, sorry, we'll take care of it, and replaced him with a more generic prospector gunslinger sort of character for subsequent pressings of the game. A month later, in January of 2000, it was announced that Buzz Lightyear to the Rescue was coming to the Dreamcast soon. And while the game's reputation as a good-selling but pretty middling 3D platformer, one of a million trying and failing to be the next Super Mario 64, was pretty set in stone, there was excitement that the graphics would be upgraded, similar to the drastic improvement that fellow N64 3D platformer Rayman 2: The Great Escape received on the 128-bit machine. But the first screenshots were underwhelming, and Buzz Lightyear to the Rescue blew past its original March release date, with delays announced until summer. The game finally hit stores in the first week of July in the year 2000, and, well, the initial response was a mixed bag, with IGN saying the graphics are sometimes excellent, but sometimes leave them wondering if they're running their port through a PS1 emulator first. But that's them. I gotta make my own judgments. And thus, to steal the phrasing from The Beast 721, an inspiration in the beating every game on a system front, I set out on my journey to beating Toy Story 2: Buzz Lightyear to the Rescue. But also, I didn't want to spend any money on the stupid Buzz Lightyear game. So I grabbed an emulation, and that emulation was f***ed. And it was f***ed in a way that was not something I could just hand-wave away. The sound was fine, and the controls were good, despite what I was reading in old reviews. But the game in this approximation looked visually broken. A thing I couldn't hide in video form. And a thing I couldn't just say, yeah, well, sue me, give me some money if you want accuracy. What I was promising was accuracy and detail. And on the very first game I was committing to be more thorough and detailed about, I was gonna bullshit my way through a broken emulation? I couldn't justify that. So I sucked it up, and I bought the disc. When it arrived, I plugged it into my tangled mass of cords and adapters that got it from my actual Dreamcast to my computer. And I started playing the real game. And right away, while it looked so much better, I also saw a very frustrating benefit of doing it this way. The game's controls, with the actual Dreamcast controller on the actual Dreamcast, felt, well, f***ed. I'd actually progressed through about 5 levels on the emulation before jumping to the disc proper, and suddenly I was way worse. something I would not have noticed or been able to cite had I not had the problem object itself. So, in the issue of that commitment to detail, let's get into my real, actual experience with Toy Story 2 Buzz Lightyear to the rescue. First up, before any other decision you make, the game requires you, every single time you turn the system on, to decide whether you want to hear the game in mono or stereo, which is an extremely funny thing to be this militant about. After that, the game opens with a clip from the movie, and then you begin in Andy's bedroom. The first thing to get used to here is the way you target enemies. You can shoot freehand while running, but it's woefully inexact. And the way you can specifically aim is that you have to hit Y, which moves you into a first-person mode, which you can jump in but cannot move. It does have this amusingly stupid but surprisingly visually effective reflection of Buzz's dumb face in your helmet. Once in first person, you aim at the next available target by hitting the triggers, but very quickly it becomes clear that unless you are immediately in front of a single enemy, it can get mind-bogglingly unhelpful in a hurry. If you find yourself slightly to the left, right, or in front of an enemy, the auto-aim will do nothing for you, and things can get annoying quickly. Anyway, like I said, the platforming controls are real shaky. Buzz has a jump and a double jump, and they are woefully inexact at all times. Something not helped by the hyperactive camera. Something so clearly problematic that the game has an option to turn it from automatic to passive, where you have to rotate it yourself, which does not really fix the problem. The level sends you across a chasm, climbing poles and shimmying across zip lines. Two more things that will become pain points for me soon enough. You shoot off a few locks, a metric that seems like it will be important but comes up like twice again in the entire game. Once you exit the room, you run into Rex, who in each level basically gives you the rundown of what you need to be doing. To advance in any level, you have to earn one of 5 level-specific Pizza Planet tokens. Pretty much every level has the same 5 general ideas. Find 5 little whatevers and return them to a Big Mama whatever. Beat someone or something in a race of some sort. Climb to the top of the level and beat a big boss. Find 50 coins in the level and deliver them to Ham. And usually a 5th token that is just sort of generally hidden in a surprise place. Level 1 takes you around the house, as you have to 1. Find 5 sheep, bringing them back to Bo Peep. 2. Beat the RC car in a race around the garage. 3. Climb up to the attic and beat a big toy robot. There's another one hidden in some shelving. The boss level is absurdly easy. It's just run around in a circle and then shoot him whenever he gets tired. Repeat, repeat. The second level is... mono, I guess? The second level is Andy's backyard, an adjoining neighborhood, which asks you to collect 5 toy soldiers, beat the RC car in another race around a big track, climb to the top of an enormous tree to fight some sort of kite boss, and of course, get 50 coins for Ham. Enemies will give you coins the first time you kill them, but they respawn at a psychotically constant clip, and you are perpetually killing enemies over and over and receiving nothing for it except avoidance of more grief. My first time through this level, the first token I received was the hidden bonus one, which is in the middle of a pool on an inflatable duck. Easy enough. Also a stupid thing I noticed, the game has you save every time you earn another token, but it never asks you to simply overwrite your old save. It creates an entirely new save every time you save your game. So I was perpetually running out of space, and having to go in and delete a bunch of previous saves to make sure I could keep saving for the future. Let me tell you, the first time I did that, I wasn't sure if deleting one would make them fold like a house of cards. I was holding my breath, wondering if I was going to lose it all in an instant. But luckily, on we go. Once we pass the neighborhood... Mono's fine. Once we pass the neighborhood, there's a special sort of boss battle level called Bombs Away, where you have to take down an attacking, swirling aircraft. It is insanely easy, and settles into the rhythm that the entire game adheres to. All the bosses are hilariously simple to beat, but all the basic platforming is an absolute migraine-inducing nightmare at all times. It's also very funny that there isn't any exclusive footage for this game. Every time you advance a stage, you get a bonus movie that is literally just a clip from the film itself, which had, mind you, been out for nearly 8 full months by the Dreamcast port's release. Either way, it reminded me just how genuinely funny Toy Story 2 is, and made me want to watch it again. Level 4 is... let's go with stereo this time. Level 4 is the construction yard, and this is where I started having some issues with my admittedly pretty basic HDMI adapter that I used to get game footage from the Dreamcast to the computer. This level is set at night, and with that Superman 64 Silent Hill-ass draw distance, it can be remarkably difficult sometimes to discern what you're doing, or where you're going, or what's in front of you. This level has some typical tasks. You have to collect Little Tyke's construction guys, you have to get 50 coins. Instead of a race, though, Slinky Dog challenges you to leap through wet cement to collect 5 wrenches for him. The other major one is that there's a jackhammer boss at the very tippy top of the construction frame site. Or at least, I'm told there was, because Buzz Lightyear to the Rescue's platforming is relentlessly shaky. And since you can kind of pick and choose what tasks you complete to pass the level, some of them are just too cumbersome to even bother with. Most of the ones I skipped are the climb and climb and climb to fight a guy tasks, simply because the barrier for completion is so ridiculously high because it's so easy to fall. The game even tries to mitigate this by putting checkpointy shortcuts like this level's elevator, and it's still just far too much to ask most of the time. Speaking of far too much to ask, let's get into what basically ended up being my nemesis level. The one that I spent the most time with, that made me want to rip my hair out the most. Level 5 is called Alleys and Gullies. It is another dark, now rainy level, and is a collection of nearly all the things I hated about this game. The collect task is gathering 5 rubber duckies, but I couldn't figure out where and how to obtain all of those. The 50 coins is always on the table, but for quite some time, I was unable to find enough to complete it. I couldn't even think about climbing up high enough to even figure out what the level boss was. In fact, you literally can't unless you obtain an item that you get 7 levels from now. So I settled on Slinky Dog, who had another task for you here, and for me, trying to complete this mission was so nightmarish, I actually changed how I played the game going forward, because I was absolutely stuck. What he asks of you is that you cross some sort of sewer moat, Frogger style, to get to a platform he's on, where you then have to collect 5 whatevers, by jumping off the edge and jumping back, Smash Brothers style. I spent hours of my real, actual life trying and failing to get across this body of water. The platforms do not move at regular, predictable intervals, and the jump mechanic is frequently nonsense. And so the timings are preposterous to chain together. And worse, every time you fall, you plummet to the briny deep, and have to very slowly inch your way back to one side, and then slowly jump up 5 enormous steps to try again. I had so little success here, and the visibility felt so poor, that I decided to switch to an actual, honest-to-God tube TV. Because the lighting was better, and the controls felt potentially less laggy.
I want to see if stupid Buzz Lightyear plays better on a regular old-school tube TV. If I am f***ing up because the controls are bad, but also because the timing's off, because I'm running it through so many things. Most games it's not a problem, but this one's been a problem. So I feel like I'm close with no cigar. And so, I want to see if it's different. Also, the level that I'm getting stuck on is so degraded visually, it's so dark, that I cannot see. I had to blast the brightness up to even see what's happening in it, because it's like a nighttime raining scene. And so I was really struggling to, like, judge distance.
I still struggled, but managed to finally obtain that token.
I don't mean to disturb you, but I'm about to get the 5th bone. I am over the moon.
Great, going.
Yes! Yes, 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 yes! Yeah!
No time to lose.
Yeah! Yes! Yeah! Get me out of here!
But the next boss level needed 10 tokens to unlock, so I had to pour back through the older levels. And this stretch here, climbing up on this fruit stand, jumping across these platforms, killing this enemy, flipping on these bars, and getting across to start up this fan, took so much of my time that it made the time I spent trying to get to Slinky Dog feel like the blink of an eye.
Holy shit, man. Oh no! Oh, I hate this. Oh no! Oh my fucking god, man. Oh my fucking god. This is a nightmare. Holy shit, man. Oh god! Okay. Rabbit, let me jump. F you. What a broken game here.
I could put this footage on 10x speed, and it would still be too much to show you for how little success I had on this godforsaken beam. I will see this stretch in my nightmares. I did eventually manage to collect enough tokens, mostly from scrounging the earlier, easier levels, that I got the next boss, a giant pile of slime in a trash can. And once again, the boss levels are massively easier than the shitty platforming required to get to them. And I beat him first try. The next 2 levels are set at Al's Toy Barn, the toy store, and his apparently adjoining Al's Spaceland. These levels are similar in that the setting is really cool and appealing and fun, but that anything involving swinging on bars or ziplining is a war crime. You have to collect little chicks, you have to fight a dinosaur, which was so easy I forgot I even did it until reviewing this footage. You have to find Mr. Potato Head's arm. To find one of the chicks, you have to springboard to a trampoline off a moving skateboard, tightrope a store display, swing across a bar onto a zip line, and then jump off to grab it. Spaceland is even more maddening, because it has a whole zipline challenge that sucks, and a section where you have to twirl on 6 bars, one of which is a slightly different distance away, and you have to rely on the wildly inconsistent double jump metric to complete it. We'll talk more about that in a minute. This level also introduces another really fun new addition: random assaults that you can't block or avoid by enemies you can't see or take down. The platforms leading up to those spinning bars just have random tennis balls you get pelted with on a regular basis. And if you fall in the zipline course, you not only get these guys, who can be defeated by 2 spins but will hit you often, but random lasers from every direction. You in fact cannot get to Ham if you have 50 coins without braving this laser onslaught. It sucks. I know this because I once again had to scrape out a bunch of more tokens to unlock the next boss level, which was a big spacecraft that released a bunch of enemies you already fought in order. This was, once again, super easy, and seemed like a cakewalk after struggling through the levels. This unlocked Elevator Hop, which was such a terrible experience, I don't think I ever unlocked a second token, even by the end when I had to scrounge up a ton to get to the final boss. Elevator hop requires you to navigate a set of poles, each of which are a double jump away from one another and have electricity running through them. You cannot do anything else in the level until you complete this task. So this very quickly became yet another Waterloo for me. The feature of recording myself playing the game off an actual TV means I also got to hear lots of audio of myself complaining, either alone or to my wife, about how bullshit this section was.
The problem is that it's requiring an extremely specific double jump on a flip, and it's extremely hard to get it at whatever the infinitesimal apex is that I can jump to the second bar, but it's the only place you can go in the level. There's nowhere else. You have to complete this to start anything else. It's so irritating because it's just me jumping and failing, and there's current going through it, so occasionally I also get hit, and so it's just jump, nope, jump, nope, jump. It's just over and over and over and over and over. And I've done it, I would say, upwards of 50 times right now. Just trying to get, I had to stop recording and go look it up to see if I was missing something, and it was nope, just jump right. Great. Just hit it at the right time and it'll go to the second one. I'm okay, great. Ugh, almost.
Once I finally did it,
Yes! Ha-ha!
the level didn't get much better. You unlock a grappling hook that allows you to traverse the elevator shafts. I managed to nab one token by solving this easy little puzzle, and then never got a single other one, no matter how long I played. Collecting these mice? Fucking impossible.
Touch it! No!
I've got no idea how to get to the boss. I didn't even know until just now that there's another mouse you can race somewhere up there. I didn't bail on this level, I just didn't figure shit out here and had to fucking go. Level 11, Al's Penthouse, was a welcome respite in that it was irritating but manageable. You get a really easy token just by finding 5 whatevers for Bullseye here. And also, there's a really easy way to collect free extra lives that I relied on a lot as I died in the later levels. This level, like Al's Spaceland, has an extra impediment that hits you with a cannonball whenever you linger too long. But you can actually destroy these ones. It just takes time. You've got to collect some critters for Jessie, solve this pretty banal train puzzle where you just kind of have to stomp on some switches in order, beat another hilariously easy boss. Honestly, the worst thing this level introduces is these guys. The little prospector gunslinger guys. Because they take so many shots to kill and nail you from distance constantly and respawn just as regularly. It does have this super irritating bathroom platforming section where you have to raise the water level and then hop on floating platforms to get across. And eventually, I surmounted that as well. From here, I once again had to go back and scrounge up more tokens, so I could qualify for fighting Emperor Zurg, which I initially guessed was the final boss, but nope, there's 2.5 more levels after this. Zurg was, again, comically easy, and I beat him first try, no problems. The final 2 proper levels are set at the airport, one in the baggage claim area and one on the tarmac. The baggage claim level was maddening, having lots of enemies, including the gunslinger guys, who again respawn constantly. The hardest part is once again platforming upwards, and bouncing on bags and swinging on bars, again, sucks. Collect little tyke pilots, grab some weights for this guy, climb these pieces of plane and get the token. I even made it to the top to fight the boss, who was the prospector from the movie. Once again, kicked his ass easy. I actually really liked the final tarmac level, if only because it was the only one that truly felt challenging without being utterly broken and unfair in some way. I collected these little airport bags, I got 50 coins, I defeated the blacksmith.
Oh, I forgot to be taping, but I just whipped this guy's ass. It was real easy.
I beat this sort of befuddling lights puzzle in a way that I barely even processed, but I did it. I also managed to defeat this slinky race, where the task was just run on this tight maze pathway to the end, without jumping or touching the poison goop sides. And it was difficult because the controls are so shaky, but I managed to do it and felt a lot of satisfaction. From here, of course, I had to get 8 more tokens to get access to the final boss level. And I spent hours more fighting through the other levels, cursing and yelling, as I scraped out the few more needed. The final boss was, hilariously, just the last 3 bosses at once, and they weren't much more difficult in tandem than they were apart. And with that, our long national nightmare was over. I had beaten Toy Story 2, Buzz Lightyear, to the rescue. Bubba! To grade it, I think it looks nice enough graphically, although nowhere near as nice as it probably should have, considering the Dreamcast has 4 times the processing power that the PS1 does. Those complaints about clarity and draw distance on the other systems come up here often as well, and there just isn't much excuse, especially for how delayed it was. The sound is mostly fine. That Toy Story theme hits every time, and they have a lot of the actors from the original movies doing the voice work, although the constant repetition is maddening. If you stand for too long, Buzz will say,
No time to lose!
or a couple other stock phrases, and to draw your attention to where Rex or Ham or the other characters are, they routinely yell for you, over and over, which ended up driving me absolutely bonkers.
Buzz! Buzz!
Hey Buzz! Hey Buzz! Hey Buzz!
Buzz!
Hey Buzz!
Need some coins here, Buzz! Need some coins here, Buzz! Need some coins here, Buzz!
Because they'll do it anytime you're even slightly in proximity, which is a problem when, for instance, you've literally just finished speaking with them.
Buzz!
The controls are really where the problems lie. Platform controls in this era are broken even in the best of circumstances. Even Super Mario 64 had kind of shaky movement. And I took Sonic Adventure to task way back on its episode. And here, it's just as much of a nightmare. So much of this game is just falling, falling, falling. Just whiffing on a jump or falling off a ledge. And it just involves so much screaming and cursing and sheepish apologizing to my wife for yelling ornate obscenities while playing what is nominally a children's game. I have joked, mostly when I've gotten mild criticism for one video or another, that they think this series is about Dreamcast games, when really it's about me playing Dreamcast games. But I think I've honestly hewed to regular journalistic tones and standards for the predominant run of the series, and I think it's a more worthwhile endeavor to get more personable that will allow these videos to endure and be more fun. So, fuck it. Fuck the Dreamcast files. This is the Brian files now. Just kidding, but I'm definitely planning to be more in-depth, more personable, to tell you my story of playing the game, instead of just going over the basic tenets of what the game is. I think that will ultimately be more satisfying, more involving, and more fun. So the Dreamcast files will not be going weekly or bi-weekly anymore, but I think that's for the best. And to make up for it, and to make sure I'm doing everything I can to be as accurate to the real experience as possible, I'm starting a Patreon. For $3. You'll get early access to the videos, but for a little over that, I'm going to record myself throughout the entirety of playing the games, and put that on a private VOD. If it somehow gets popular enough, I might even be open to streaming it live again. I may have another tier that has some other cool stuff on it, but I haven't quite decided that yet. I'm just gonna try and make this series what it should and could have been from the jump. And I might even go back and fix a couple videos I thought I could do better on. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's a big swing, it's a big ask of you, and I thank you guys for supporting me so far. I'd love to know what you think of this video, and the interest level you'd have with this change in direction. I'm really glad I did this though, because even with all the frustration, it feels like it kickstarted my actual desire to play video games, to the point that I had to make myself focus and write this instead of jumping straight into the next game. And I think all the subsequent writing and video work will stem from that basic tenet. If you've made it this far, thank you. I appreciate you all. And I'm going to do what I think will be some really cool, fun work going forward. All great journeys start with one small step. And somehow, for me, Toy Story 2 Buzz Lightyear to the Rescue is that step. I had a terrible time, and I loved every minute of it. That said, I never want to see Buzz Lightyear in a video game again for as long as I live. Oh no. Oh no. Oh God! Oh no! Next time, this isn't so much a Royal Rumble as it is like a nightmare peasant encounter of random plausibility, with lots and lots of clones. Yeah. Yeah.